your fitness business podcast snapshot, an introduction to author Bob Burg and his book, The Go-Giver, the 5 stratospheric laws of success, and a breakdown of each law and how to implement them into life and business. All that and more coming up in today's episode. You're listening to the fitness industry's leading fitness business podcast for owners and managers, where each week we provide an educational platform for our listeners. Our guests come from all around the world to share their expert advice, tips, and knowledge with you, the FBP family. This month's interviews are brought to you by Tribe Team Training. Welcome back for another amazing episode from the Fitness Business Podcast. If this is your first time joining me, welcome to the family. I am your host, Dory Nugent, and you are listening to episode number 328 from the Fitness Business Podcast. Author Bob Burg from the Go-Giver book series is our special guest today, and he is going to enlighten us on the 5 laws of stratospheric success that will bring you both personal effectiveness and professional success. However, before we start, let's hear a message from our podcast partner, Tribe Team Training.
Are you interested in increasing your center's income and your trainer's income from small group training? Tribe Team Training is the new way to get more members engaged in small group training and paying extra. Click the Tribe Team Training link in the show notes or go to tribeteamtraining.com.au/podcast for your free formula to see how much income you can make from small group training.
The Go-Giver is a little story about a powerful business idea. Through the Go-Giver series, author Bob Burg will guide you through the 5 stratospheric laws of success to reinforce the old proverb, give and you shall receive, hence the term, the Go-Giver. Please allow me to introduce Bob Burg to the Fitness Business Podcast.
Our guest today is author, somebody that I just have admired. I've read most of his books. I follow on his social media platforms, and I am just honored and privileged that Bob Burg, the author of the series, the Go-Giver series, is here with us today. Bob, welcome to the Fitness Business Podcast.
Thank you, Dory. That was very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. Great to be with you.
I read the Go-Giver years ago. I'm a big leadership junkie when it comes to books, and working in the fitness industry. Somebody led me to your book, and then I was hooked, and then I just followed the whole series through.
Thank you.
So I'm so glad that we're going to get a chance to push the information out about what the Go-Giver is all about to our FBP family. So why don't you start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about the Go-Giver series?
As far as myself, just a former salesperson, turned sales manager who just started sharing, with others what worked for me, but none of what worked for me was anything I really thought of. It was all what I learned and what I studied, and had the honor of really picking up from others and just putting things together in a system. And the Go-Giver series, co-authored with John David Mann, who's a fantastic writer and storyteller. 3 of the 4 books in the series are parables, so they're fictional stories. And I'm a how-to guy. I'm step 1, step 2, step 3. So John is a great writer, a great storyteller, and so it was a good combination. The premise is really simply that shifting your focus, and this is really, really the key, Dory, it's shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well, and not for some way out woo-woo magical mystical reason. No, it actually makes very logical, rational sense. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on that other person, discovering what they want, what they need, what they desire, what problems that they have, what that you can help them solve, how you can help them feel better about themselves, make their lives better. Hey, when you do that, people feel good about you, right? People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to be a part of your business. They want to tell others about you. So it's really understanding. And, and I often say this when I speak at sales conferences, nobody is going to buy from you. Nobody's going to join your health club because you have a quota to meet, right? They're not going to do it because you need the money or because you want another member. They're going to do it because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's good news, by the way. That's great news, because it means when you're that person who can find a way to communicate that immense value through your focus on them, you've created that what we call benevolent context for success, and they're much more likely to want to be a member.
Yes. And it's funny, when I first started the Go Giver and somebody was explaining the concept to me, I honestly, my first thought was, it's about giving, you're working in the health club. It's about giving stuff away for free. You're like, you give stuff. And I'm like, it took me, probably first couple of chapters to realize, no. That's not what the laws are about.
Exactly.
So there are 5 laws that we're going to talk about, and we're going to have you explain each law and go into a little bit of detail about each one. But I would like to just ask you, the thing that I just absolutely love about the Go Giver and the Go Giver Leader is the way that the laws are laid out. Like you said, it's not like, okay, hey, here's step 1 or law number 1, here's law number 2. It's put in this story that's, you can relate to the salesperson.
Right.
You can relate to each of the people that he goes and visits over his lunch break throughout the entire week. It's just the coolest story. Whose idea was it to come up with that story, that type of storytelling?
Well, I had wanted to turn another book that I had written. It was really kind of my first big book. It was called Endless Referrals, and the subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. The first edition of that book came out back in the mid-'90s, and it was really a book on business networking before there were 100 books out there on business networking. And so this was quite a while ago. And it was, traditional how-to type of book. It was my system. And when I talk about a system, Dory, I define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. In other words, if it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired result of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A and continue to do A, and you'll eventually get the desired results of B. So it was my system for entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service. They were proud of it. They knew how much value it brought, but they may not have wanted to consider themselves to be salespeople, and they certainly didn't consider themselves to be confident when it came to going out into their communities and creating those relationships that lead to new business and referrals. So it was really a step-by-step system. But I'd always read business parables and always enjoyed them because I think, as you know, stories connect on a deeper level than how to. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could take the basic premise of Endless Referrals, which is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, and put it in a parable form. Coming up with the title was easy because I just asked myself, what's the basic essence of that person who can very quickly yet sustainably create those know, like, and trust relationships? And the answer is they're givers. Their focus is always on giving value to others. But the best thing I did for that book was to ask John David Mann, who at the time was editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to submit articles to. And very few people at the time knew John outside a very specific niche. Now he's he's sort of a golden boy co-author for, when a publisher or an agent has a celebrity or a business exec or an athlete, someone who has a story, but they ask John to co-author it, right? Or he sometimes even ghostwrite it. But back then, few people knew about his brilliance. Fortunately, I was one of them who did. So I asked John to be the lead writer and storyteller, and so that's, so yeah, it was my idea for the parable. And since then, by the way, John's written several parables with different co-authors. Well, the last one was with David Bach, The Latte Factor, which is a book on investing, and it's a parable, and it's just a fantastic story. But so yeah, I was very fortunate to team up with him.
Yeah, it has such like a mystery to it. When you start reading, like you want to know who the chairman is, and it really I have a feeling that everybody and I'm an audiobook person, so I listen to it. So the whole time I'm listening to it, it's like you create a vision of what the chairman looks like, and you want to think that he has this mystique, mystery kind of look and feel to him. So it just, yeah, I think that's what I loved about it. It's just different than your traditional sales books. And trust me, I have read, or should I say, listened to a lot of sales books.
Well, I'm honored to know that you've enjoyed it.
Very, very, very much so. Yeah. And I'm hoping that our listeners out there will also follow suit and also enjoy either reading or listening to the Go Giver series as well. So let's start with law number 1, which is the law of value.
Yeah, this is the foundational law, right? Mm-hmm. And it says that your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, when you first hear that, it's a little counterintuitive, right? Give more in value than I take in payment. That sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy, right? So we simply have to understand the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, membership, what have you, that brings so much worth to another human being that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be ecstatic that they did, while you make a very healthy profit. So again, let's just say as a health club owner, as a gym owner, you sell a membership, whatever that price happens to be, X, okay? And, what are you giving that person? Well, on an intrinsic level, you're giving them access to the equipment, to be able to get in better shape, better condition, but you're also giving them something more. You're giving them more confidence. You're helping them feel better about themselves. You're giving them more energy, helping them do better at their job, in which they're going to produce better, make more money, probably have better relationships with those at work and at home because they feel better about themselves. They look better, right? And so, and plus, you're providing them with the excellence in terms of instruction, the consistency, the attention to detail, and this person's getting a lot more than what they're paying for, but you're making a very healthy profit, which you should. But this happens, and the law of value is based around the fact that the reason this happens is because your focus is not on the fee. Your focus is on the immense value you're providing that potential or current member. Okay, that's your focus. The money is the reward. So what John and I say in the follow-up Go Givers Sell More, we say that money is simply an echo of value. That's key. Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the value must be the focus. The value comes first. The money you receive is a very direct result, a natural result of the value you've provided another human being.
Yes, and in our industry, being one of the many service industries, it's very, very important for clubs. And if you're in the sales department, like I was in the sales department, you did spend a lot of your time trying to focus on value. Your front desk was trying to create value. Your personal trainers were trying to create value. Your Group X instructors were creating value because as your sales team, that's what you were selling. So it's very important that you continue to show what the value is for the membership fee. And if I remember correctly, that character, the character Ernesto demonstrates, am I right? The value law. He's Italian restaurant owner, correct?
Yeah. And, as he said, the food was that's the product, but that's not what it's about.
No,
it's about the experience.
Yeah.
It's about how people feel as a result of eating there in that case, or being a member, or, whatever it happens to be.
Sure. And he was surrounded by competition, which is the same in the health and fitness industry. You're always surrounded by competition.
Right. As he said to Joe, the protege in the story, his food, sure, was good. It was very good, but there were a lot of restaurants that had very good food. So it has to be about something else. It's more than that.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So let's get into law number 2, which is the law of compensation.
Yeah. This law says that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 says to give more in value than you take in payment, law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives we touch with the exceptional value we provide, the more money with which we'll be rewarded. Obviously as a fitness club owner, that it's not a matter of just having one member, right? It's a matter of having lots and lots of members that you're providing that exceptional value to. In the story, the CEO, Nicole Martin, explained to Joe that law number 1 is that represents your potential income. Right. But it's law number 2, how many, and here's the word she used, how many lives you impact, that determines your actual income.
Mm-hmm. And if I remember in the story, their office is set up pretty cool. It's a educational software program for schools. Right. And he walks in and he's like, what the heck is this? Because they have this room filled with like Play-Doh stations and crayons and like etch and sketches and all.
Right.
But he learns a lesson over his 1-hour meeting with Nicole.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about the law of influence and about improving your network.
Sure. The law of influence says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now, again, that sounds counterintuitive, counterproductive at best, and maybe even Pollyanna-ish at worst, right? And yet the greatest leaders the top influencers, the most successful, top money-earning, highest money-earning salespeople, this is exactly what they do. It's how they run their lives and conduct their businesses. They're always looking out for the best interest of the other person. Now, let me qualify this, if I may, because I think this is very important. It can easily be misunderstood, right? When we say place the other person's interests first, we don't mean you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all. It's simply understanding what Joe learned from several of the mentors, and as you and I spoke about earlier, the golden rule of business, the golden rule of sales. And that is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely moving from that I focus or me focus to that other focus. Looking to, as Sam, one of the mentors, advised Joe, make your win all about the other person's win. And as you do this, and you do that at every touch point, from the moment you meet someone, whether it's at a local event or an incoming call or somebody walks in, or through the relationship building process, through the sales process, the follow-up, follow-through, the referrals, to the degree you do this, that's the degree people really, you develop what we call in the story, your army of personal walking ambassadors.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I remember that precisely. The other thing that really helped me with this law, because I seem to struggle with this one a little bit, and how brilliant you put in the very beginning of this story when Joe was trying to make that deal at the last second of the third quarter, and he calls his buddy that he's trying to get the deal with, and he's like, hey, you owe me.
You owe me.
And you bring that back around during this law, because you're saying with the law of influences, stop keeping score. And it get rid of the whole you owe me. Yeah. And I love how they circle back around to that, so much so that they bring in the story with the wife in the evening where she had a bad day. And they always had like a rule, like a 50-50 rule. And that night he threw the 50-50. He did his homework. He threw his 50-50 rule out.
And made it 100.
And made it 100%. Yes, on her. I was like, oh,
Dory, the reason we did that is that although it's a business book, and obviously it's a business publisher portfolio, Penguin Random House, we wanted to make the point through that subplot, if you will, to sound really storyish, right? That success principles work across the board. It's not just for business. Success can be measured in many different areas. There's, of course, financial, there's physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, social, relational, and probably a dozen other ways. And the point was that success principles really work across the board.
I agree. Yes, absolutely. And what I was going to say is I felt like at that point in the story, it made the story so relatable. No matter who you are, what you do for a living, you could relate at that moment. And that's again, I loved that. That law is the hardest one for me to grasp, but yet I love that section of the book. I felt like the light bulbs were popping after you kind of dived more into it and kind of unfolded the plot on that one a little bit more.
Thank you. Well, again, that's John's brilliant storytelling at work. Much more than mine, believe me.
So law number 4 is, for me, my absolute favorite law. I think probably because I want to think that maybe I'm good at it. So, you always tend to gravitate, of course, towards the things that you feel like, oh, hey, I think I kind of have this one down. But I love this one. That's the law of authenticity.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and this is the realtor that stands up and tells the story in the book, and the audience is crying, they're laughing. She's just real. She's a real person.
Yeah, Deborah Davenport, and
yes.
She really, within that speech, she shared a very, very important lesson, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are all indeed very, very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true authentic core. But when you do, when you, as we like to say, show up as yourself, day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel comfortable with you. They feel safe with you. Why wouldn't they? They know who they're getting, right? And consistency in ourselves is something that we value, but consistency in others is something we demand if we're going to trust them. Okay. And that was really the main lesson. And when people don't show up authentically, the biggest reason is not because they're dishonest or looking to pull one over on someone. I mean, it's a big world. There's lots of people out there. So certainly there are those types, but 99.9% of the time, that is not the reason. Typically when you see someone not showing up authentically, Dory, it's because they really don't have the self-confidence to do so. It's difficult to show up authentically when you don't feel you have anything worthwhile to show up authentically for or with. Mm-hmm. It's not embracing our value is what it comes down to. I think as human beings, we all have two types of value. We have intrinsic value. Just by being a human being, we have value. But we also have what I call market value. And I define market value as that combination of strengths, traits, talents, characteristics that allow us to bring value to others, to the marketplace, in such a way that we will be financially rewarded. Now, we all have these, but it can be difficult to really recognize them and embrace them in ourselves. Why? Because we're human beings and we're just too emotionally involved with ourselves. And we often don't recognize that greatness that we have within us, which is why it can be so important to have coaches such as yourself and people who can work with you and who care about you and yet are not so emotionally connected to you that they can't, see it as well. So it's very important that we learn to recognize our strengths. We also have to be aware of our weaknesses too. And we need to know which weaknesses we can ignore, which ones we have to work or mitigate, if you will, and which ones we have to turn into strengths if we're going to be effective. Okay, there are those we need to turn. But we really need to be able to identify our strengths in order to lead with them and really, really operate from an authentic base.
Yeah. And this is one, and again, I'm most comfortable with this one. I was in sales and I was a sales director, and I knew my weakness. My weakness was I wasn't the savviest sales person out there with all the scripts down and all the, hey, this and that. But I'm telling you, I felt like the way I could salvage the sales is just by being me. I'd have to be like, listen, this is just who I am. And hopefully you like me. I'll do whatever I can for you. Yeah. And I do feel like authenticity for me is a strength. And I had a young girl that I hired, and we had all these processes. You always have these sales processes. And I could tell she was overwhelmed and she was nervous about, well, when do I say this and when do I say that? And finally, I took the whole book and I threw it and I said, you know what? Just go be yourself. Because she was the cutest
sounds like Deborah in the story.
Yeah, she was. She was the cutest young thing. She just had that bubbly personality. You automatically liked her from the second she opened her mouth. I said, you know what? Let's take this, throw it out the window and just go be yourself. And she's doing very well for herself.
And, and just to clarify, it's not that processes aren't important and that but it has to come from that authentic base. Absolutely. And sometimes it's best to throw all that out and just realize, then you can come back to it.
Yes, I agree. Once you get comfortable talking to people, you can come back to it. And yes, I do agree. Processes are important. I'm not saying that they're not. All right, Bob, let's finally get to our last law, which is the law of receptivity. And it's funny because it's like, you can't really, there's an order to these in a sense. And you really can't take this last law and put it first because Joe, our sales guy in the story, he had to go through all of the laws in order to get to this last one.
You make a great point. If the law of value is the foundational principle, the last one, the law of receptivity, I think is what kind of brings it home. Mm-hmm. It completes it because without it, you just can't be as effective. Mm-hmm. And the law of receptivity simply says that the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And this really, Dory, means nothing more than understanding that you breathe out and you also have to breathe in. Remember when Pindar and Joe went through that in the book, right? You breathe out carbon dioxide and you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving. You breathe in, which is receiving. Contrary to, what we're taught from the world around us, in which, and this is a world in which we receive very negative messages about money, about prosperity, about wealth, about business, right? So despite all that, the fact is giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're simply two sides of the very same coin. Mm-hmm. And they work in tandem, okay? Mm-hmm. You're not a giver or a receiver. You're a giver and a receiver. But what you know is that the way it works, because successful people deal in truths. They deal with the way things are, not the way they wish they were. And what you understand is that the giving comes first. The giving of value must come first. Pindar said to Joe early, in the story, some people go up to a fireplace and say, first give me some heat and fire, then I'll throw on some logs and some newspaper and light a match, right? Or it's like going up to the teller at the bank and saying, first you give me an interest payment and then I'll open up an account. Well, life doesn't work that way. And business is part of life and business doesn't work that way. We must make the deposit first. We must focus on the giving of value and allow ourselves to receive.
What I think is neat about that is if you would have asked me to define or write a definition down about the slogan, I know that's not the word I'm looking for, but to give and you shall receive, right? And then listen or read the book, your definition of that would be completely different. When you first hear, to give to receive, it's like, I'll give you something and I'm going to take something back. But after going through your 5 laws, it softens it. It's not so A and B. It's like give a little, take a little, and mix it all around, and it's all going to come back good for you.
Thank you. Well, what we say, and I think I used this term a little bit earlier, is when you operate this way, you create what we call the benevolent context for your success. Mm-hmm. And that's really the key.
Yes. And it's funny, after you read the book, and I hope our listeners take the opportunity and take the time to listen or read the book, you will see the concepts of the go-giver out amongst people. You'll see it. Now that I'm more aware about it and more in tune, I see it happen. I actually was in the office the other day and I heard somebody say, "Oh my gosh, I went to dinner last night and somebody picked up my tab for me." And I know it's somebody that I know. I'm not sure who it was because they seem to lead to believe with the waitress that they knew me, and I'm just like, there's the go-giver in action, in a way. So, well, Bob, this is just such great stuff. I love the 5 laws. I hope that our listeners get out there and pick up your book and start to page through it and then activate upon it. Because in the book, you have to do homework. You have to do the law, law number 1 before you can move on to law number 2. So.
Yeah, well, you got to take action. That's a big part of any kind of it's turning knowledge into wisdom, right?
Get your pen ready now for Keep Me's Fit Bizpiration.
All right, now that we know the 5 laws, Bob, what are your 3 tips to start implementing these laws into our lives?
Dory, I really believe that these 3 can be boiled down into one, and that is just begin implementing the laws. Take action on them. You don't have to do it perfectly. That's not important. It's just making the effort to do it and do it the best you can and build on your small successes. When you come to a gym, you don't start out at 500 pounds. You start out with 50 pounds and you build on your small successes until you get to the place where you're feeling good, looking good, you're confident, and you've got it together. It's the same here. Just begin applying it and build on your small successes, and in no time, you're going to see the fruits of that labor.
Keep Me, smarter member retention. KeepMe.ai.
And now it's time to get back to the show.
Bob Burg, honestly, what a treat. Thank you so much for coming onto the Fitness Business Podcast and sharing your wisdom and your Go-Giver series with all of our listeners.
Oh, the pleasure is absolutely mine, Dory. Thank you so much for having me.
So what do you have coming up? Do you have anything new coming up, or what are you working on? Can you let us in on any secrets?
Really, there's no secrets. People can come to burg.com. They can get chapter 1 or an excerpt of any of the books. We do have a series that was recently released. It's an online video course called Endless Referrals, The Go-Giver Way.
Ooh, I will definitely check that out. I've not seen that yet, but I am definitely a fan and a big supporter. And if we can do anything for you here at the Fitness Business Podcast, you are now part of our family, and we are here to support Bob Burg and anything that Bob Burg puts his hands on. So thank you.
I appreciate you very much, Dory. Thank you so much.
A warm and special thank you to Bob Burg for sharing his insight on the 5 stratospheric laws of success. and for sharing his time with our Fitness Business Podcast family. I hope that you have enjoyed our episode today and can begin to put these laws into practice. Now let's hear a message from our podcast partner, MyZone. MyZone is the industry's leading wearable technology platform that drives engagement and provides personal feedback and motivation through gamification, wherever your members choose to work out. Go digital to provide a hybrid offering. Your members will love you for it. Learn more at myzone.org.
Quickfire 5.
Quickfire 5 is up next with Josh Fox, CEO and founder of Bottom Line Savings. Josh Fox, founder and CEO of Bottom Line Savings, is going to be our guest next week on the Fitness Business Podcast. So we have his Quickfire 5 questions. Josh, welcome to the Fitness Business Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, this is where we have a little fun and we get to learn about 4 things from you. And then you're also going to tell us what to expect next week on your episode. So let's get started with the first question. Who inspires you in life and why?
I would definitely say my inspiration is definitely my family. I think that's an answer that a lot of people would give. But, I've had the fortunate situation where my parents have been married for over 50 years. And I am not married yet, but I do aspire to be able to find someone like my mother and father to have such a wonderful relationship. And they've taught me everything about values and morals and how to treat people. And that has been taught to me from the day I was born.
Oh, well, you know what? That is a common answer, but it's a great answer. And I know that a lot of people wish they could use family as an inspiration. And sometimes, unfortunately, they aren't able to. So I think it's a great answer. Number 2, why do you do what you do?
I just, would have to give a shout out to my sister, who also has been married for over 10 years and is a wonderful mother and, wife to her husband. And I would aspire to have such a great relationship as she does with her family. So it really feels good during family time to be with, such great people.
Okay, we got a shout out to the sister. She's going to love you for that. That's great. All right, Josh, let's move on to question number 2. I'll read it again. Why do you do what you do?
So our business is all about creating and saving jobs for corporations. And in such a horrible time that we're living in, where unemployment rates are at such a high, I wake up every morning with the mission of helping companies find money so that they can get people back to work. It feels pretty good.
Yeah, you have the perfect occupation right now. I'm sure a lot of people are very grateful for what you're doing for them. All right, question number 3. If you were not doing what you were doing, what would you be doing?
Well, I was a weird kind of dual major in college. I majored in finance, but also did theater and drama. So it's interesting to be on podcasts because I was financially minded, but I always wanted to be an actor. So if I'm not doing my job as CEO of my company, I'd probably go make some movies.
Okay. So what actor would you most like to be? I'm going to come off of the script a little bit and say, what actor would you most like to be?
I mean, George Clooney is kind of the coolest guy on earth, so he wouldn't be a bad one to be and emulate.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I want to be Maverick from Top Gun, which is showing my age, I guess. But yeah.
Clooney found like the fountain of youth. As he gets older, he gets cooler somehow.
I know. You're right. George Clooney's like that too. All right, let's go. Question number 4. What is one book, podcast, blog, or Facebook group that you would recommend to our listeners and why?
Well, one of our partners is a guy named Harvey McKay, and Harvey is now, 80 some odd years old. He was the person who wrote the book Swimming with the Sharks. Right. And I think he sold tens of millions of copies of his books. And, he's just a partner of ours, an inspiration to ours. And, he's someone that I really respect and look up to. So he's a great guy and a great author.
Perfect. Great answer. I like that one. And finally, Josh, when you're on the show next week, what would be one action item the FBP family will take away from your main interview?
Well, in an industry that's hurting so much right now, with people not really being able to go to the gym and participate with the wonderful opportunity that people have, I think people will take away how to really save money so that they can get their clubs reopened and get back to where they used to be before the pandemic.
All right. Well, FBP family, make sure you tune in next week. Josh Fox from Bottom Line Savings is going to give us lots of advice and tips on how to save a few dollars.
It's time to hear from our podcast friends, Precor.
Tribe, if you haven't explored a functional training space for your gym, then now is the time. With Queenex Functional Training by Precor, there is a unit to fit every space. Plus, education is included to ensure that training is delivered with confidence. You need to jump online and check this out right now. Go to precor.com/fitness business podcast. Hi there everyone, Chantal here. Thank you for joining me for this week's throwback episode, when we take a little trip down memory lane as I share some of my all-time favorite episodes from the first 5 years of the show. This week's featured show is episode 293, and it was called How to Build Member Relationships for Long-Term Success. And my special guest was Robbie Kelman-Baxter. During the interview, we chatted about what's changed in membership business models over the past 5 years, the effect that subscription model businesses such as Peloton and Mirror have had on traditional membership businesses, how a membership business can stay relevant into the future. And if you haven't yet heard that episode, then take a listen today simply by clicking on the link in today's show notes, or go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and search for episode number 293. Happy listening.
Want to learn more about author Bob Burg and the Go-Giver series? Head on over to our show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, where all of the links and resources can be found. Next up, a special message from our founding partner, Active Management.
Hi FBP family, it's JT from Active Management, the founding partner of the Fitness Business Podcast. Thanks to the amazing technology at our fingertips, we can now work with clients all over the world. But right now, you can join the free online Active Management Facebook community. It's an amazing group of people just like you. Sure, I share weekly resources, but it's the power of the community that you will experience that will make this your go-to Facebook group. Remember, it's free, fun, and inspirational. Go to facebook.com/groups/Active Management Community.
What you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.